Hey, hi
Hello.
folks. Hey everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to your usual weekly Quarkus Insights dose with two very special guests today. You probably recognize both of them anyway. We have Antonio, who is joining us as a presenter for the first time. He's usually on the chats, they're asking stuff,
Yeah.
mentioning various
So
Quarkus
make
things.
sure you ask him lots of dicey questions. So he's on the other side now.
Yeah, I'm the guy asking questions on Zulip and on mailings, and sorry
That's
about that.
No, that's what we want. That's what we want. We want more questions. And then, of course, we have Emmanuel joining us after a couple weeks of a break from the show.
Yeah. With
In Movember, you are in the.
yeah, my wife hasn't seen it yet, but that's definitely what I'm running for. It's like another 7 days or so. Oh boy.
Cool.
So, yeah, news. We were preparing a bit before, as we usually do, right? You said 110 is coming.
Yeah, 110 should be out this week. Well, so basically, yeah, the core release is done.
Yeah.
Guillaume already did the core release. So we should have the platform release, which then means like we announce everything and update code Quarkus.io and stuff. So I don't know, today, tomorrow, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, once we have that, then you'll be able to get your 110 without any friction as usual.
Okay. Any
And
one features you like to highlight of that one?
I don't remember actually because well the truth is for this 110 release I didn't play a big part, so I wasn't following because of some other stuff that we'll hopefully have in 111. So I don't really know what the like really big features are. I
Yeah.
apologize.
No worries. But I noticed that Clément on the blog quarkus.io/blog, Clément is on a mission, right? And he's talking a lot about reactive around Kafka. So if you're interested in any of those two, like there's quite a few good blogs by Clément, that he's been pushing to the blog since I think October onwards or something, maybe even before. So go back to quarkus.io/blog. There is we have tags,
Yeah,
so if you can
I
filter out
pasted.
by
Hmm.
Kafka or reactive, and get your dose of the subjects you're interested in.
Yeah, that's great. We need some more reactive evangelization because not most of us aren't really like super familiar with all the really
Well,
gory details.
we'll get Antonio's feedback on that. That would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So Antonio, why are you here?
Well, I'm a developer basically, but I don't know why. Once in a while, I write a book. The first time was a long time ago. It was the first book in French, actually, called Java EE5, and believe it or
No,
not,
Java EE5.
Java EE5. And believe it or not, he sold plenty on the bookstore, and I got spotted by an American editor. So then I wrote a different book in English called Java EE6, Java EE6, and updated to EE7. And each time it was really painful. There is actually something that I do love. It's creating the table of content. I spend a lot of time creating the table of content. How do you order um, your thoughts? How can you talk about technology A if you haven't explained B before and stuff like that? So I really like doing the table of content, but then writing is a bit of a pain. It's a really hard work.
Me too. I've got a book on podcasts. I got the table of contents, and I've got this first chapter, and I stopped because I got bored.
Well, I was getting bored due to lockdown. Here in Paris, France, the lockdown was very strict back in March, April, May, and I already had talked about this book to Emmanuel, and so it was, I had a thread in my head, and the lockdown came, and I think that's what pushed me from going, no way, I will never ever write a book again to let's do it. So I did the pleasurable thing. I wrote the table of content for a few weeks. It was quite a big challenge because Quarkus is really vast, and you can have a book that goes 10,000 pages on all the extensions and everything. So it was a real challenge to make it short.
Plus, you wanted a book that was really focused and short, not like a Bible. Right?
Yeah, which is always difficult, and it's one of the challenges too. It's the first book when I started was understanding what does it mean to understand something, because either I could have write a 50-page book on Quarkus core. I would have talk a lot about the internals of Quarkus and stop there. Or maybe have a second chapter saying, now that you know everything about the core, this is how you write an extension, and stop there. But so understanding was, with all these extensions, where do I start? Where do I stop? And when I drew a limit of the extensions that I wanted to talk about, then came the second challenge, which was, let's take one technology, one extension, and write 10 to 15 pages max. So when you have something like JPA, writing 15 pages, it's not easy because the specification is 400 and something. Or when you want to write about the configuration or logging. So yeah, there was this kind of challenges. First, write the table of content, focus only on a subset of extensions. So there's always a chapter missing because I had to stop somewhere. And then took these technologies, the one that I found were quite important for first release, and try to shrink that to 10, 15 pages.
Okay. So that's what you did. Like, for understanding Quarkus is like general overview, and then some of the key extensions within 15 pages each, and you end up with like 150, 200 pages, something like that.
Emmanuel, you wrote the forewords of my book, and you don't even know.
1, 2, 3,
and you don't even know it's 410 pages long. Giorgio was part of the review team, so he read the 410 pages. Well, that's including the appendixes, because the book basically is 350 pages, and at the end I explain you how to install Docker if you don't know how to do it, how to install Kubernetes if you don't know how to do it, JDK, GraalVM, well, all the tools basically. So the book in itself, it's 350 pages.
But the thing is, it's not like a reference, right? So you could skip. You could pretty much skip to the extensions you want, right? You want to know about.
Yeah. The genesis of all that was a year ago, actually. A year ago. Wow, 2020 was funny. A year ago, with Emmanuel and Clément, we wrote a
French
one-day
team.
Yeah, that's true. But we wrote in English a one-day workshop that we gave at Vox Microservices conference. So for nearly a month, we wrote an extensive workshop. It's still online. It's actually being updated. And there's one Red Hatter, I forgot her name, who actually played it again. So it's a workshop that anybody can take. It's on GitHub. There's the code. There's all the ASCII doc. You can
go to quarkus.io/quarkus-workshops/superheroes and super-heroes, and you get there.
So everything started there with Emmanuel and Clément. We wrote code, and we also wrote the the workshop. And basically, we had, I can't remember, Emmanuel, but I think we had roughly 50 people, in front of us. So the workshop was really detailed. Do this, and then do this, and then do that. So we didn't have to go around the 50 people all the time because that was too many.
Well, we did for people installing stuff on Windows XP and having really, really weird behavior with
Oh,
Docker and then GraalVM. And
yeah, I
that
remember
was
that at
interesting.
Devox Belgium too, where we were together, and yeah, almost every problem was like Windows related, right? Because none of us had Windows and didn't really know much about it.
So I
Yeah.
think everything started there. You know, we just wrote code and text, and then the lockdown came, and then I got bored. So, you know, for 2 months I got locked down at home with two babies. Terrible, terrible. And so then I started to write. You know, the workshop was there, so I wanted to do something different, different code, different everything, but with the same structure of the workshop. And while I was doing that, I was doing the understanding, and then, you know, so then I published the two at the same time: the understanding Quarkus and the practicing Quarkus.
By the way, there is a funny joke. So practicing Quarkus is P-R-A-T-S. No, P-R-A-C. I
TI.
cannot do it. Man.
Well,
Okay,
basically
so
the joke.
P-R-A-C-T-I-S-I-N-G, right? With a S. And that's the proper English way. But if you pay notice early in that call, you've seen practicing with a C, which is the American way of doing that. And James, or the design lead at Red Hat, that well, at JBoss at least, that also help us doing those font that we have each week. Actually, use the American way of saying that. So
Well, it's
I
better.
never knew there was a difference, to be honest.
No, it's
Wow.
even, the joke is longer than that, because when I wrote the Java EE7 book, it was in American English. And then when I started to write the fascicles, it was my way of writing. And being in France, we are closer to the UK, and our English teachers are mostly English. And when we have a week of holidays, we go to England. So when I wrote my JPA fascicle and bin validation fascicle, I wanted to write it in British English. So I have a British reviewer, and I learn every day new things, because
biscuit.
I'm also used to American English. And so I wrote the practicing book with a C. And after 200 pages, I sent him the practicing book. And each time there was practicing with a C, he would have changed it with an S. And I was like, wow. And I had already sent the first draft to Red Hat. So, and then I sent another draft saying, I'm really sorry, but it's practicing with an S, not with a C. And so Red Hat in America said, oh, really? But no, we're going to use it with a C. Do you mind? And I was, no, it's fine. I'm going to use it with an S. Use it with a C. And then at the end they went, okay, let's do it with an S. But
Oh, nice.
so it's practicing British English. Yeah.
There you go.
Learning stuff every day. Cool.
So, yeah, what do you hope people, that would pick the what should people pick those books, and what do you think they'll get out of it?
So
Instead of just going to the website and
Yeah.
or listening to Insights or whatever.
That's basically what I did. When I started to write, it was in May, but as I said, we started a year ago with Emmanuel and Clément for the workshop. And basically, I quite enjoyed it. Writing these two books, I quite enjoyed it. It was a bit of a challenge, but I was constantly reading your blogs and your guides, and reading the other books, and reading plenty of things, actually. And I was learning a lot too. So basically, you can either read my books, or you can do what I did. You can just go and pick up, read everywhere, or you can do both, because in my books, I think there's about 200 external references. So each time I took to a topic, I like to give a reference on something. It didn't came out of my brain. I read it somewhere and digest it. So if you don't know Quarkus, start with the understanding, because it's really chapter 1. It's a one page line of code saying this is what you're going to see. This is Quarkus. Chapter 2, it's because all my fascicles are more or less structured the same way. Chapter 2 is basically no code and a lot of talking. These are the words that we're going to use. So on chapter 2, I'm having a look. It's called Understanding Quarkus, and basically I talk a little bit about microservices, in case you don't know. If you know, just keep the section. Reactive, microprofile, cloud native, Graal VMs, and of course Quarkus. So chapter 2 is basically the rest of the book. You will hear about Graal VM and profile. If you don't know it, read it on chapter 2, understand it, and then move on. If you already know what Graal VM is, just skip this section. So for people who don't know Quarkus, start with the understanding, read chapter 1, chapter 2, and then, well, either you can go chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or if you have some specific needs like reactive, I can't be bothered, just keep the entire chapter 8. And as I said, each chapter has 3, 4, 5 technologies. To give you an example, chapter 4, it's core Quarkus. And what do I mean by core? Well, CDI. So there's a lot of, when you use any extension on Quarkus, you get the CDI extension. So CDI is everywhere. So I explain a little bit what CDI is. I don't push it too far, but I talk about @inject, the qualifiers that you'll see later, and events too that we'll later see. But I stop there. I don't talk about decorators and stuff like that.
Good, because we don't support them.
Yeah, I know that. I talk about configuration because, again, it's an extension that it's built in. Quarkus is highly configurable. Profiles, that's something also built into Quarkus. Logging, and also the Quarkus life cycle, because you can start Quarkus with the main class. You can hook code before or after it starts, it stops, and whatever. So typically chapter 4, it's what I limited being the core of Quarkus, and each of these technologies take 10 or 15 pages. So you should read that if you don't know Quarkus. And then you have chapter 5 that concentrates on data. Again, there's a little introduction on JPA. I talk about panache, bin validation, data sources, transactions. So if you don't need that, skip it. Chapter 6, it's about HTTP microservices. So again, JAX-RS, OpenAPI, JSON, JSON binding and processing.
Sebastian has a comment here. He says, nothing about security. Really?
I know, Sebastian.
I know, he's poking fun at you, isn't he?
Well, so in the famous table of content that I wrote back in May, there was a security chapter, and there was also an integrating chapter. So I wanted to talk about security, JWT, and so on. And on the integration chapter, I wanted to integrate Quarkus with different things. One was Spring, Infinispan, and Keycloak. So it was definitely on my to-do. And it's still on my to-do, because I'm I started those chapters and then I had to put them away. Too much work, as I said, I could still be writing. There's so many. My to-do list is quite impressive. So I try to, like doing some, DDD. So my chapters are bound into a domain. So I have chapter 5, as I said, it's about data as a whole. Chapter 6 about microservices, but HTTP. And chapter 8, it's about microservices, but event-driven. So there was this idea of having a security chapter, and hopefully it will one day.
So that means the book is evolving.
Yeah. Now I'm still in the phase of I will never write ever again. But I know this phase will pass, and the good thing is, I can generate a PDF quite quickly. I can give it to Red Hat quite quickly, and they can put it online quite quickly. So
You said to Red Hat because I guess Red Hat sponsored you to write those books. So that's we're probably going to put the links, but they are available on the Red Hat developer portals. Is that correct? Okay. And then you said where we were chatting a bit in before the meeting, but then you essentially we borrow them for 6 months and then they're back to you and you do what you want, right?
Yeah. Well, I've given them away to Red Hat until May. That doesn't mean in May they will disappear from the Red Hat portal. They will stay there. I want to put them on Kindle because I've published a few fascicles under my brand. So I would like to publish them on Kindle. But then you'll have the choice to pay a few bucks on Kindle or to get them for free on Red Hat. Then it's, I'll see with Red Hat. But if in 1 year I want to upgrade the code, add a chapter, I will be more than happy to give it away again to Red Hat. So I'm putting them on Kindle more because it's my brand and I quite like to have them there. But to be honest, I'm more than happy to update the book once in a while when I feel I have time. Now it was really a intense moment. I would like to do that, when I have time and I like to do it. And yeah, the first thing I'll do is give back the PDFs to Red Hat, and hopefully it will be something that will evolve. I'm not saying that the next edition will have security on it, because I have plenty of things that I would like to talk about.
Unless Sebastian somehow contributes, a chapter. Who knows?
That's what he said. He said, "I'll help with the second edition."
Thank you. No, and there's also Katya. I talked a lot to her about integrating Infinispan, and then I sent her a message saying, "I hope don't be sorry, but I'm not doing that on this edition. It was really a lot of work."
So you had to write the chapter, and then you're not including
No. I told her, "Look, I will ping you when I need you when I start writing that chapter," and never pinged her. Never.
Interesting. It's just
but I
like
will.
the art of computer programming, right? It's like, it's volume 1 out of, I don't know how many. Every 10 years, there is something.
It was.
By the way, oh, yeah, go for it.
No. I was going to say that was one of the challenges of writing a book while this technology was, running. I've started heavily writing in May, and since then there's about 6 releases. So I started to write in Quarkus 1.4, 1.5, and here we are in 1.10. So, and it was not just about, now it's faster and they've cleaned this and that. No, it was just a brand new extension, so it was always, should I talk about it?
It's like, I guess I forgot which one it was. Maybe it was the reactive aspect, which wasn't really visible when you worked on your table of content. And it was visible, but in a abstract way. And then we came up with Mutiny, and you're
Yeah.
probably like, oh damn, that's
In
changing
the
our
in the history of the book Mutiny, it's the very last thing I wrote. Very last thing.
okay.
I was comfortable with messaging, Kafka and everything. I discovered a few things actually because you use also in memory messaging, which is nice. So I did a bit of in memory, Kafka. I wanted to add a bit on JMS, and then I went up later. And Mutiny was the very last thing, yeah. And when you look at Mutiny in May, I don't even know if it was on the roadmap already, or well, it's one of those things that arrived late in the life of Quarkus, and I had to write a little bit on it.
Yeah. So was it hard to follow the evolution of Quarkus, and did we break stuff like often, or was it okay?
I was
Because there is new
quite
technology and there is also breaking existing stuff because we're trying to improve things, or maybe we make mistakes, right? So,
I was quite impressed with every month there was a new release. In between there was a few patches, um, and as I said, I started to write code. I have plenty with the two books. So one, the understanding book is, think of it of a bunch of hello worlds. I'm going to show you a little bit of messaging, a little bit on Quarkus, a little bit on Mutiny, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And the practicing book is really 3 microservices talking to each other with a database, etc., etc. I started to write that back in May, and I only had one tricky thing with test container, which was a known bug, but the code didn't break ever. On the practicing, it could be understandable because it's 3 microservices running microprofile. But on the understanding, I have a lot of hello worlds on plenty of things. None of the code broke. So that was, I when I started, I thought, is this an alpha thing? Is Quarkus going to break every month? But no,
it's
I
like
think
the never-ending book. It's like, okay,
yeah.
keep refreshing. No worries.
So it was no. The challenge was keeping up with the new things arriving. I remember Giorgio's while he was doing the review. I have a chapter on testing.
Yeah.
How
That
to
one changed,
test
improved a lot.
native, etc., etc. How to mock. So the chapter is basically divided in, yeah, 4 section, which is the testing framework. So I talk a little bit about rest assured and stuff like that. How to mock with Quarkus, and how to test native executables. And that was one of the very first chapters that I wrote. Actually, it was back in May. It was easy. I know. And Georges in the in his review said, "Oh, and don't forget to talk about that." And that was something new you introduced back in July or August. I can't remember. Test profiles.
Yeah,
I think it was test profiles.
1.7. Yeah.
And inject mocked too.
Right.
Yeah.
And not later than in 1.10, I think, or 1.9, you came with this true transactional in test annotation. And I'm like, it's not in the book.
Yeah, I mean, we that is true. Like when we release every month, there's always new stuff, so it's really hard to keep up with everything. So yeah.
But yep. Sorry.
No, I know we have. So we have half an hour. I know you had some code actually to show, which could be interesting for people, and also we wanted to discuss maybe some of the stuff you felt were missing in Quarkus that we could improve. And also, you said you have read some other books and you could give some feedback about them.
Right.
So
Yep.
not sure how to organize that. Maybe we should do a bit of code to refresh people's mind.
Yep.
Okay.
So shall I click on share my
One
screen?
click.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll set you up.
Go.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
can everybody see my IDE?
No, because
I
it's
think
dark mode.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, yeah, you are right. I think it's better if I put it in light. I know it's better for presentations and so on. So I'm not going to show the code of the understanding book because, as I said, it's a lot of hello worlds on plenty of technologies. I'm just going to show you the code that you will be writing with the practicing book. So the practicing, basically, it's a huge hello world, and you go step by step.
can you maybe like some people are saying that the font is
you-
probably too small.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
Well,
can't for the left menu, but during the code you will be able to zoom.
Okay, that's fine.
yeah.
Can you make
So
that one bigger though? The center.
how do I do that actually? Oops.
Basically go to File Settings.
Like that, is it better?
Oh,
Yeah, that's better.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
better.
cool.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
So basically, everything that I've been writing since my very first book was well, it's about a bookstore. So you read books and sell books and send stuff like that. And Stephanie Pardo in the review team said, "You talk a lot about books and CDs. It's very old, and nobody read books on paper anymore, and nobody listens to CDs anymore." So believe it or not, I renamed the entire thing, every little piece of my code. So it's not a bookstore anymore; it's a vintage store. So you can find books, CDs, vinyls, tapes, old stuff. Old stuff.
That's
So-
a nasty hack you did.
Yeah.
Like Stefan would say, the '90s are calling. They want
Yeah.
their their mojo back.
Yeah.
So, again, the idea is not to have a complex business logic, but more, aggregate a lot of technologies. So, now basically, what you do is you start writing one microservice and another one, and they communicate with each other, and then you have the communication fails, then you observe them, then you deploy them on Docker, etc., etc. So it's a really step-by-step book. If you look at the practicing, it's do this, write this line of code, make those imports, test it this way. Chapter 2, then now do this and do this and do that. So we start with this number microservice, and basically what it is just a microservice that generate book numbers, because we are doing books. So here I have a microservice listening on port 8701. So if I hope everybody sees that, if I curl numbers, as you can see, just generate book numbers. Nothing fancy. There's no database. There's no nothing. But this API happens to generate books. So you first do a bit of JAX-RS. You do some JSON-B because you change the JSON format, you customize it. There's a bit of, you see here, the book numbers have a dash. So I introduce a configuration because you can, sorry, I'm trying to make the font bigger.
By the way, for people not familiar with it, the tag thing is Antonio is using ASCII-Doc, and the tags here are here so that he can import some pieces of the code inside the book.
The
book is always up to date.
Yeah. So the code that you see in my book actually compiles and is tested, because thanks to ASCII-Doc, and again, thanks to ASCII-Doc, I love those guys. So what you see here is not Quarkus related, it's really ASCII-Doc. So, you know, you change a property, you invoke, oh, and of course it doesn't work, but it should work. Maybe because, well, anyway, but I also explain you how to use live reload, how it works nicely. Oh, I know, because I'm not in dev mode. Yes, I'm not in dev mode. So if I number Quarkus dev, I was in production mode. So sorry about that. So I also play with. Oh no, sorry. It's this one
The
here.
banner would not be seen on the when you go do a curl, right?
Oh, it's this one. Sorry. It's this one. So here you see that the ISBN 10 and 13 don't have dashes, but if you set to true, they have. So I also explain how you can configure Quarkus, how you can inject configuration. So that's what I do here, and the live reload thing of that Quarkus has, which makes it very easy. As you can see, I didn't restart Quarkus, and from one request to another one, Quarkus restarted, reconfigure itself. So you know.
So question for you on that. So you've written a bunch of code. How useful you found that feature was in practice? Some people say, "Oh, it's a gimmick," but it's usually people that haven't really used Quarkus in anger. So
It's quite funny, because last week I was with a team that uses Eclipse as was an IDE, and the auto reload wasn't working, and I really frustrated, and I was trying remotely to take their computer and everything, and then I forgot that Eclipse doesn't save the files automatically like IntelliJ IDE does when you lose the focus. So it was so natural, this live reload, that sometimes I was typing code like that would not compile, and go, oh, what's wrong? So you get used to it so much that sometimes you even you are in the middle of writing some Java, it doesn't compile yet, but because IntelliJ IDE saves it, and you launch the request, and the auto reload thing happens. So it was quite funny. You really get used to it, and I really like it. I come back. Remember that I come back from the Java EE world, where you compile your code, you package it into a WAR, you deploy it on WebLogic or whatever.
you call your mom.
Yeah. So I quite like this feature, to be honest.
Okay.
And also coming from the Spring world, Quarkus, it's much faster. So it's Spring on on speed. So that was nice. On steroids, yeah, that's how you say it. So, and because it's a microservice, you can infinite loop. You can check the health. So you use a microprofile health to see that this microservice is up and running. And also, it's a nice thing. You have Swagger UI for free. So here you have the your get, and you can do, instead of a curl, you can use Swagger UI. So you write a first microservice that returns just book numbers. Then on another chapter, you write a book microservice. So this one goes a little bit further, because it it injects a transactional service. So as you can see here, it's transactional, and I use Panache. So if you don't know Panache, you go back to the understanding book. And so here is a Panache entity, a JPA entity with Panache. You have been validation stuff, but also you have open API annotations. So, again, you write an entity, then you test it, then you do this, then you do that, and you end up with the book microservice. And so let me start it. And this book microservice, if you look at the Swagger UI, so at the contract, it has much more thing. So you can get books. So here, if I just try it out, it gives me. Oh, sorry. You execute all the books in the database, so you have plenty of books. But you can get a book, get a random book, and of course, you can create a book. What happens when you create a book? Well, you need an ISBN number. So then you have the book microservice that goes and talks to the number microservice. And because everything is ugly and you don't want to spend doing curl, you go to the next chapter. And the next chapter doesn't, go into how to write an Angular application. I give you all the Angular code. So the idea is not to understand how Angular works. The code is already there. But what's interesting is that you can actually take the you can actually take the Angular application. It could be React, it could be Vue, it could be whatever,
or whatever the newest JavaScript framework is.
Yes, and package it on a Quarkus. So I explain how you do it. So no, basically, this is just a Quarkus instance. If you look at the, trace, it's just I'm starting up a new Quarkus, very very light. As you can see, there's no JAX-RS, there's nothing, and this way you can interact with the microservices. So here I point to the number microservice, and you generate numbers. And here I go to the other microservice. So I can have the list of all the books. I can view a specific book. I can delete, a book.
Whoa! Did you really delete this one?
What? No, of course not. I will never do that, Emmanuel. Never. And what's interesting is when you write a new book. So Quarkus new book, you have a title, give it a number of page, blah blah blah, and then what happens? New book. Well, it has a number. It has a ISBN number. Why? Well, because he talked to the other microservice, and then you go to the next chapter. And the next chapter is, okay, well, here is the number microservice, and I kill it. So, okay. So if I go back to the UI, the microservice book number generator is not there anymore. But I can still create a book. What happens with that? New book 2. When you save it, well, here it's because I missed some Angular skills. It should have displayed a nice message saying the book is not created yet, but it will be one day. So I missed the nice error message. But basically, what happened is here on target, we saved the book, the new book 2. We saved it onto disk, and because we can't have ISBN numbers, we store that in JSON, and one day a batch will solve that, or when I recover or something like that. So then you go to another chapter. So now you know how to handle fallback and timeouts and stuff like that. And then you have another chapter that says, okay, you have all those microservices, you have dealt with fallback and network issues. Let's monitor them. So I even have a little tool. So I give you all the code. There's a little tool that goes and does HTTP gets, HTTP posts on all the microservices. And because we've added some metrics, so here it's micro profile metrics, we can go to Prometheus and see nice drafts. So if I leave that like that, and we will come back in a few minutes, you see those drafts moving. And then you arrive to the very last chapter, where we take the three microservices, the two microservices plus the Angular application. We generate native executables, package them with Docker. I didn't go till Minikube. That's again for the future. But basically, we have a Postgre database. We have a Prometheus. We've packaged these three Quarkus into Docker images, and you shebang the entire architecture with just one command. As you can see here, the microservice got killed. The number of and here I don't know what it is. It's the time that takes to create a book, as you can imagine. And if I, while it's being stressed, I killed the number microservice, so now I can't generate book numbers, and you will see here appearing a lot of JSON files, because I'm saving all these books, then can't be fixed. One thing that on the last chapter, I take those three Quarkus instances and I create native executables, and I'm giving you the suspense. You can't generate the native executables for number microservice. Why? Well, because to generate fake data, I use Java Faker, and Java Faker works with a lot of introspection, a lot of crazy things that GraalVM just eliminates, and it doesn't work. So it's also in a real project, you're gonna create your microservice or application. You're gonna put a bunch of external dependencies, and then you're going to ask GraalVM to compile that into a nice binary. Well, most of the time it will not work, and you're going to have to hack it to make it work. So it was something I wanted to put also. It's an external dependency that is not supported by GraalVM. Does a lot of introspection, a lot of things that GraalVM just gets rid of. And
you could hack it, or you could say, okay, I'm gonna take a bullet for the community and write an extension that will actually offer Java Faker support. So I don't know how they know which area they need to do reflection on, but if it could be driven by an annotation, that's how we could, make that transparent for the next guy coming.
Well, either you have read my mind or you have read my tweets, because I've,
Oh,
I've I pinged the company behind that. It's an
yeah,
Australian company, and unfortunately, they just because there's a lot of PRs open for more than a year. The last version of Java Faker is a year old. There's plenty of issues, and they just answered that basically they don't maintain that a lot. So I asked them, what about giving, it to the community? But that was exactly what I wanted to do, was to take an external dependency and create a Quarkus extension. I also had a look at Quarkiverse. So hopefully that is on my to-do list. And who knows, I'll write another chapter about that.
cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I think this is a good example of how to write an extension, because
Yeah.
probably most of the like libraries that won't work will probably be similar to this, like in terms of what you have to do.
Yeah. And that's it, I think, for the demo. I don't know
Cool.
if you have other questions or.
Yeah. Well, I think let's go on the other books. So you said as part of your building these two books, initially one, you actually read a lot of other books, so you could say how bad they are, so people could go for your book or
I
something
would
like
never
that.
do that. Shall I stop sharing my screen? Yeah.
No,
I've
that's okay.
already
You can, yeah.
we've already turned it off anyway, so don't worry
Oh,
about it.
Don't.
okay. So sorry. I'm gonna go back.
So
Yeah.
you
So
can go to Quarkus.io. So where could we find the books again?
Quarkus.io/books, I think, but I'll paste it in the chat.
Yes. You see a lot of them, which is good.
yep. And when I started, I started with the two packs books. One from I think it's John Klingen, I think, who did the hands-on native application with Java and Quarkus.
Speaking of the devil, he's just showed up.
And the second one, also a PAX book from Caesar, Eiko, Antoine, so a few Red Hatters. So these two PAX books were already published when I started. So I bought them on Kindle. They really helped me a lot. It was a lot of Kubernetes, a lot of cloud native. My understanding book, it's slightly, as I said, I talk a little bit about JPA in case you don't know, in case, just keep the section. I talk a little bit about CDI. So those books were more cloud native and Kubernetes and Docker and things like that. Then, while I was writing, somewhere around July, August, I can't remember, there was the Quarkus cookbook from Alex Soto and Jason Porter. Really good. It's this kind of cookbook thing where you have a problem, they have the answer. So it's really each chapter is a few pages long. Problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, and how to solve them. So that was nice. Again, a lot of Kubernetes, a lot of Docker, a lot of things like that. But also, I think there's a bit of panache. There's a few technologies around that. I know there's two books coming soon. One from Nibras Lamouchi, I think he's a Microsoft guy. And it's playing with Java microservices with Quarkus and Kubernetes. And another one from John Klingen and Ken.
Just before that, so that one will also happen to deploy on Azure. So if you're into the Azure cloud and are interested in Quarkus, then that will be an interesting book for you.
Yep. And one written from John Klingen again and Ken Finnegan, Kubernetes native microservices with Quarkus and microprofile. That will be released in 2021, I think. But if you look at all the titles that I gave you, they all have either microservice or Kubernetes. Mine doesn't. That's why you have to take my book first. of course,
Less is more.
no, but of course, when my chapter 10, the chapter 10 of my understanding book, I talk about, well, first of all, I talk a bit about the packaging in Quarkus. You can do jars, fast jars, Uber jars, but also native executables. And then, depending on if you have a jar or a native, how to package it in a Docker image. So Quarkus helps you a lot. And then, now that you have that, how Quarkus helps you when it comes to Kubernetes. So my chapter 10 does talk a little bit about Docker and Kubernetes, but it's really an understanding book. If you don't know much about JTA, there's a little section about it. If you don't know much about rest assure, how you test your REST services, there's a little section on it. And if you don't know much about Docker and Kubernetes, there is also a little section on it.
Okay.
And as I said, the idea for the future is to have a security. I'll also like to do the CLI. As you've seen, this little tool that stresses the application, so we have nice graphs on Prometheus. At the moment is just a main class. I would like it to do with Pico CLI or PicoCli. I don't know how you pronounce that. So that would be again another chapter. How do you create a little tool that you can compile natively and then just go and stress the application a number of minutes, a number of times, or whatever. So that's why you should take my books, and that's why you should really look into it every 6 months. If there's a new release, a new update, I will let you know.
Every week, you know.
Yeah, you need to follow every Quarkus release every month.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Antonio. I don't know, Georgios, if you had like this one last question of sort, but
How
you
about?
gave a nice. Oh yeah, go for it.
I was like, I was wondering, like, from your perspective, because like we're too into this, basically, Emmanuel and I and the other folks that are usually here, we're too into this to actually be able to know. But how was your experience with like getting help from either the Quarkus community or the Quarkus developers? I mean, how did that work out? Was it easy for you to, like, when you had a problem and like it was obviously a bug or whatever? How easy was it for you as like someone who's just like starting with Quarkus, let's say, to get help?
I think you have the problems like everybody has. You have a mailing list, you have Zulip, you have Stack Overflow, you have issues. So like everybody, people ask help on plenty of different channels, and it's quite difficult to follow. I love Zulip, but I always feel bad when somebody answers a question that I have on Zulip, because I go, man, it's not on Stack Overflow. There's not an issue. This information is going to be lost. So that's the frustration that any framework has when they multiply the channels. Other than that, I tend to use Zulip more often than Stack Overflow, because you guys are always there and you answer quite quickly, and it's really nice. And I love Zulip compared to Slacks or Git or whatever. I at the beginning it was a bit strange, but I love it. So I was quite amazed, and I don't even know how you do, guys, to release monthly Quarkus and be so reactive on the chat and on the issues and everything. So well done, because
Thank you.
I can assume it's a lot of work to make the code happen, release it, and at the same time help people. And then so having several channels is a challenge, and then Quarkus, now with Quarkus coming, it will never stop. So it's going to be a challenge more for you than for us, because Quarkus is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well,
and
you can answer some questions.
No,
know that you're an expert.
what I really liked, and that's also why I posed Spring and Micronote, because I did a proof of concept last year with Micronote and I really enjoyed it. The killer feature of a Quarkus is the tagline that Emmanuel said last year. You know, you all have at least 5 years of experience of Quarkus. If you know a little bit of CDI, a little bit of JAX-RS, a little bit of JPA, it will work, you know, and that's great. So then you can focus on the things that you don't know, which seem to be the infinite as the pace it grows. So yeah, I really liked it because really quickly I could do things without reading. I already knew JAX-RS and Java EE, so to start it was really easy, and then I could concentrate on other things.
All right, we're 1 minute over, so thanks. Well, thanks for the praise. And yes, I mean, if you have a Zulip question and you feel it should be on Stack Overflow, just copy your question, copy the answer. It
That's
actually
true.
is helping. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
true. I should
Anybody
do
can
that.
do that.
Yep.
Yeah. So go
answering your own
ahead.
question on Stack Overflow is actually allowed, and they actually
Right.
want you to do that.
Yeah, good point.
All right, everyone. See
Thank
you
you
next week
very much,
for
Antonio.
next episode. Yeah,
Thanks
Thank you,
everybody for
guys.
joining.
for that.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.